In this video we're gonna set this enemy. Whenever we get near it, he will chase us, and we will also set up this player idle animation and the player run animation. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this topic. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna find the sprites. Okay, I'm gonna drag it into this in view. Okay, so I will put a link in the description. Okay, you can go and check this out, these sprites. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna rename this. We're gonna rename this enemy something like that. Okay, we're gonna rename this, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna add rigid body component, okay, for gravity, and we also gonna add box collider 2D for collision. Okay, so first component we're gonna add rigid body 2D for gravity, and what we're gonna scale the gravity scale. We're gonna increase by 3 unit, and we're gonna set collision detection to continuous. Okay, and we're gonna freeze the z axis. If we don't freeze the rotation in z axis, it will rotate like this. Okay, it will rotate like this. So what we need to do, we need to freeze the z rotation in the z axis. Okay, and I am going to set the rotation in the z axis to 0 again. Sorry, I'm going to 0 and I'm gonna select this move tool. So what we're gonna do, next thing we're gonna do, add a box collider. We're gonna add a box collider 2D. Okay, find box collider, hit the add component and edit the collider. Okay, edit the collider as the size of a sprite, so something like this. Great. Okay, something like this. Now it's pretty fine. So what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna animate this character. Okay, so I'm gonna drag the animation tab over here. Okay, so select the enemy and create animation. Okay, create. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna firstly go to assets folder. Okay, we have created this animation folder. We're gonna go to that and we're gonna create a subfolder of animation. So right click, new, and folder, I'm gonna call it something like enemy underscore animation. So we're gonna place all of this animation into this folder. So we need to keep things organized, and we're gonna call this first enemy. So we're gonna call this enemy underscore. I am gonna this animation will be idle, and hit enter, enemy underscore idle. So what we need to do, we need to drag those idle sprites. Okay, firstly hit the record this button, okay, to record the animation, and drag those as sprites. So we this 4 sprites is idle, so I'm gonna drag it into the animation tab and I'm gonna play. As you can see, it's fast, so we're gonna make space between these keyframes. So like 20 I guess would be fine. So if I play, as you can see now it's pretty fine. Okay, and hit the record button. To hit the record button, now it's recorded once again too. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a next clip which will be run. Okay, so select 1 second the enemy and create a new clip. Okay, and we're gonna call this enemy underscore run. Okay, we're gonna call this enemy underscore run and hit enter. So we're gonna drag all of the run sprites over here. So hit the record button to record the animation and drag all of, so these 8 frames we have the run animation. I'm gonna drag it over here. Okay, and play. As you can see, it's pretty fast, so we're gonna make space something like 30 I guess would be fine. So if we play the animation, as you can see now it's fine. So we're gonna hit the record button once again to stop the record. Now we have recorded these 2 animation. I'm gonna drag animation tab over here down. So if we go to animator tab, as you can see, by default idle animation is selected. We will play the idle animation. You can select any of them by default state, as a default state, by right clicking on that, set as layer default state, but I'm gonna leave it as a enemy idle. So if we play the game, idle animation will be played. Okay, and it will fall down due to gravity, and we have added box collider 2D for collision, so it will land on ground. Okay, so as you can see, fine. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a enemy script. Okay, so head over to project and then assets, create a script folder. Into that script folder, okay, a script folder, right click, create C# script, name that to enemy, and select the enemy game object and drag that script to add component section of enemy game object. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make firstly prefab of this game object. let's suppose if you delete from the scene view or hierarchy, you won't able to restore that. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to make prefab means copy of that object. So make a prefab folder in assets, okay, and select the enemy and drag it to the prefab folder. As you can see, it turn out blue. As you can see, now we have made the prefab. If we delete from the scene or hierarchy, we can drag this enemy over here. As you can see, with all shape option, as you can see, we attach this enemy script. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna open up the enemy script. Okay, firstly we're gonna check between our own position, means transform dot position of enemy, and player position. We're gonna check if it's lesser than or equal to some amount, something like attack range. We're gonna make 5 units, something like that. If that is the case, the enemy will chase the player. So what we need, we need the player transform position. Means we need player transform. Basically transform is position, so we need the player transform. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create an empty field of transform in enemy script. Okay, and we're gonna make it public so we can see it over here. Then we're gonna drag this player transform into that game slot or field. So we'll have the player position. So what we need to do, double click it to open up in Visual Studio enemy. Okay, double click it, and in the top we're gonna make empty field. We're gonna make it public so we can see in inspector the type of component is transform, basically position. And you can call something like player position or player, something like that. I'm gonna leave it as a player. Control S on your keyboard to save this whatever you write. So okay, so you will able to see over here. Okay, an empty field of player transform will appear. So what we need to do, we need to drag this player into that field. So we will have the player position. Then we can check the distance between our own enemy position and the player position. If that distance is lesser than or equal to some unit, something like attack range, we're gonna make. So we're gonna chase the player. So as you can see, player, it says none transform. So what we need to do, we need to drag the player transform into that game of slot. Now we have the player position. Okay, now what we're gonna do, we're gonna do it update function, because update function, as you know, it call every single frame, and we need to check every single frame. Okay, we need to check every single frame, so that's why. So we're gonna check over here, we're gonna do if condition, if factor 2. Okay, vector 2 dot distance. Basically this function takes two position or two vectors. Okay, and it will compare. So firstly we're gonna pass the our own position, basically means transform dot position, means over here our own position means enemy position, and comma, we're gonna pass the second argument, our second position, we're gonna pass the player position. Okay, if between our own position, mean basically our enemy position and player position, if it's lesser than or equal to some unit, something, let's say 5. Okay, 5 unit, sorry, 5 unit, what we're gonna do, we're gonna chase the player. So instead of hard coding over here 5f, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a float variable, and we're gonna set it to public so we can adjust in the inspector. So we need to don't we don't need to come over in the script again and again. So that's why we're gonna make a variable. Okay, and we're gonna make it public so we can adjust in the inspector. So the type of that float will be float, and we will call something like attack range, something like that, attack range. By default you can set any value. By default I'm going to set it to 5 unit. Okay, then I'm gonna replace this 5 to our attack range. Okay, we're gonna pass attack range. So attack range by default we set 5 unit, as you can see. So the distance between our enemy transform dot position, means over here enemy position, and the player position, if it's lesser than or equal to attack range, means 5 unit. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna chase the player. But before that, if it's working or not, what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out a message in the console. So we have to type debug.log, and we have to pass a string. Let's suppose we're gonna call player in something like attack range. Okay, and end up with semicolon, and control S to save this script whatever you write, and head again to Unity. You will able to see an a parameter. Okay, attack range parameter will appear. By default we set it to 5. Okay, by default you can adjust over here in the inspector. Okay, but I'm gonna leave it 5 as it is. Okay, So just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So so just as you can see, as you can see as you can see, attack range by default we set it 5. You can adjust over here, you can put 1 2 3 like that, but I'm gonna leave it as it is 5. So if we select the console and if we hit play, if the distance between our enemy position and the player position, if it's lesser than or equal to attack range, and we set attack range 5, okay, so equal to 5, so we will able to see the, as you can see, the distance between our player and enemy position is lesser than 5 unit. So that's why this message is popping out in the console, as you can see. Instead of instead of printing out message, okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna chase the player. Okay, we're gonna chase the player. So what we need to do, we need to open up the script once again. Okay, once again, instead of printing out message, we're gonna chase the player. So what we're gonna do, we have to use this function vector2 dot move towards. Okay, this function, firstly it will take the current position, and second parameter it will take the target position where you want to go. Second parameter we will pass the player position because we want to chase the player, and the third parameter it will take the speed, how much fast you should go. Okay, so what we're gonna do, firstly it will take the current position. So transform dot position means over here current position, as we know, and the second parameter we will pass the player position, player dot position, and the third argument we have to pass the speed. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select, let's suppose 5 unit. As we know, instead of hard coding we're gonna make it variable. Okay, and we can adjust the inspector. So we're gonna make it public. So we're gonna call it something like, we're gonna make it public, and the type of that variable will be float. We will call something chase speed or speed, something like that. By default you can set any below. I'm gonna set it to 2 unit. Okay, so I'm gonna pass the speed as a third argument, speed, and I'm gonna so speed, as you know, speed by default we set it to 2, but we can adjust in the inspector as well because we made it public. And we also need to multiply this speed with our time dot delta time. Let's suppose you have a super fast computer. Okay, so it, in that case, in your computer this update function will run. Okay, this update function will run 120 frames in 1 second, but my computer is laggy, so it will run in 1 second 60 frames. So there is huge difference between frame rates. Okay, so multiplying with time dot delta time make frame rate independence, means whatever computer you are using, the frame rates will be same. Okay, the frame rate, so that's why we need to multiply with time dot delta time, time dot delta time. Okay, and end up with semicolon. Okay, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna set so this vector to move towards function takes the current position as a first argument, and the second argument it will take the target position. So we want to chase the player, so that's why we pass player dot position, and the third argument it will take the speed, how much fast this enemy should chase the player. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna set transform. Okay, transform dot position we're gonna set equal to this. Basically transform dot position over here means the current position, and we are setting equal to this whatever the result is. Okay, so control s on your keyboard, so it will move towards or it will chase the player. Okay, so control s on your keyboard and head again to unity. Okay, head again to unity, you will able to see that. Okay, you will able to see that. Just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So what we gonna do, we can adjust the speed over here because we made that public. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it as it is 2. I'm not gonna increase something like that, but you can do play around with that. So so if we, as you can see, if the distance between our enemy and the player position, if it's lesser than 5 attack range, as you can see, so we will chase the player, as you can see. But when we are certain condition or certain distance, we're gonna stop the enemy to chase. Okay, and then we will go to attack. Okay, instead of chasing, if we get near him, the player. Okay, so what we're gonna do, over here we're gonna do it. Okay, over here, we're gonna check between distance. Okay, we have to do this. We have to use this function vector2 dot distance. We're gonna check between our enemy position and player dot position. If it's greater than, okay, if it's greater than, we're gonna something like 3 unit. So we're gonna make a retrieve distance and we're gonna make it public so we can adjust in the inspector. We're gonna call something like retrieve. I have misspelled, I think, but just forget me for that. A retrieve distance, by default I'm going to set it to 3 unit. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna replace this with retrieve distance. Okay, so basically we're gonna put this line into over here. Okay, over here. So firstly what we are doing, if our enemy position and the player position, if it's lesser than or equal to our attack range, as we know we set by default attack range to 5 unit. Okay, if that is the case, and if our position, okay, if our enemy position and the player position, if it's greater than retrieve distance, okay, means 3, as you can see by default we set it 3. We can adjust in inspector, by the way. So we are checking both of this condition. Firstly we are checking, okay, our enemy position and the player position, if it's lesser than or equal to the distance between lesser than or equal to attack range, which is 5. Okay, and we are checking if the distance between our enemy position, okay, over here as you can see we set 2 if condition. Okay, and we are checking if the position, if the enemy position and the player position, if it's greater than retrieve distance. Okay, so it will chase us, else it will not chase us. Okay, let's suppose our enemy position and the player position becomes 2. Okay, sorry, I just messed transform, sorry, I just messed. So I'm gonna pass transform dot position and player dot position. So basically we are checking, okay, what we are doing, firstly we are checking if the player is between attack range. So what and we are checking, okay, we are checking if the player position, if the player position and our own enemy position, if it's greater than retrieve distance, then we are just chasing the player, else we not gonna chase. Let's suppose our player position and our enemy position, if the distance between become 2, but as you can see retrieve distance we set 3. Okay, so the distance between become 2, so the enemy will not chase us, because this conditions becoming false, or this condition should be true. So we are checking our enemy position and the player position, if it's greater than retrieve distance. Okay, basically 3. If the distance between is greater than 3, then we are chasing the player, else we're not gonna chase the player. As you can see we are only doing over here. As you can, firstly we are firstly we are uh, encountering that if we are attack range or not, if our enemy position and the player position, if it's lesser than or equal to attack range, and if the distance between our enemy and the player position it's greater than retrieve distance. Okay, so we are chasing, else we're not gonna chase the player. Okay, let's suppose the retrieve distance became 1, something like that. So the condition over here will be false, because we are checking only 3. As you can see by default we set it to 3. If the distance between our enemy position and the player position becomes 1, this line won't get called, because the condition becoming false. We should have the distance between our enemy position and the player position greater than 3. Okay, it shouldn't be lesser than 3. So that's why we won't chase if the distance between becoming lesser than 3, as you can see. So control S on your keyboard to save this script and head again to Unity. You will able to see whenever we get near to player, okay, whenever the enemy chase the player, and if he gets something like 3 unit, he will stop chasing the player, because it's just taking our enemy position and the player position if it's the retrieve distance is greater than, as we know, we set the retrieve distance by default 3. Okay, so if we hit play, okay, if we hit play, we will able to see that, as you can see, retrieve distance we set 3 unit by default. Okay, so it will check between our player position and the enemy position. As you can see, the enemy gets stopped by himself, because we set retrieve distance to 3 unit. Okay, 3 unit. So that's why, so as you, when it's become the when the retrieve distance become lesser than 3, this line won't get called, because this condition becoming false. If this condition becoming false, so this line won't get called. The condition in this bracket should be true in the if condition. So that's then it this line would call out. Okay, so as we know, if the distance between our enemy position and the player position becoming 3, okay, lesser than 3, so as you can see, we are not calling this line, because this function getting false. Okay, so if this condition is true, then we just chasing the player, else we are not chasing the player. I hope you get the idea. In the next video, we will set up the rotation of the enemy. As you can see, the enemy is not looking toward us. Okay, I hope you get the idea about moving towards chasing player. Okay, if you enjoyed this video and learned something about enemy checking distance between enemy and player, okay, so give a thumbs up, and if you are new to my channel, then subscribe it for future tutorials. And if you want to support me, you can support me on patreon.com, okay, and share it with your friends this video who want to learn Unity from the beginning. I hope you get the idea. And lastly, thanks for watching this video.